There is a secret that John Wayne carried through more than 170 movies. It was his extreme disappointment with the most beautiful women in Hollywood. In 1979, hiding in his windy coastal home, our lone cowboy decided to carry out his final purge. He named 5 women, beauty icons admired by millions. But instead of compliments, he called them the worst when in bed. You will never believe that behind the glamour of the German angel was a woman who cared only about her appearance rather than her lover, or that a powerful queen like Joan Crawford could turn romantic moments into a dry hygiene inspection. Even the fragile flowers that John Wayne once wanted to protect turned out to be disasters, drowning in alcohol and suffocating depression. The trail leads back to the stormy years from 1940 to 1956, where bedroom secrets were covered up by false glamour. Amidst the pain of his final days, the Duke uttered a sentence that left all of Hollywood stunned. "I am about to go meet God, and I have nothing left to lose by telling these harsh truths." Brace yourself, because the following 5 names will make you completely change the way you look at these legendary beauties forever. Chapter 1. Marlene Dietrich, The Cold Machine, and the Play Under the Night Lamp. In 1979, at the small coastal house in Newport Beach, our Uncle John Wayne was now old and much weaker due to lung cancer. He no longer sat on horseback or held a gun majestically like in the movies, but only liked to sit on his old leather chair, sip some liquor, and look out at the sea. On a quiet afternoon, he began to recount the women who had passed through his life. The first name he mentioned with a bitter smile was the Queen, Marlene Dietrich. Surely anyone who watched movies at that time knows Marlene Dietrich. She was a world-famous German beauty with long legs and an extremely luxurious appearance. When John Wayne met her on set in 1940, he was just a simple cowboy, and she was already a huge star. Wayne said that at first he was instantly mesmerized by her. She was so beautiful that she made men hold their breath, and Wayne was no exception. He thought he had found a treasure, a dream woman who was both seductive and passionate. But the truth is usually not like what we see on screen. Wayne said in a very honest voice that as soon as the two entered the private room and closed the door, things started to go wrong. For a Western man like Wayne, he liked naturalness, liked the feeling of two people truly connecting and being passionate with each other. However, Marlene Dietrich did not think so. She brought her whole queen style right into her private life. Wayne recounted that being alone with Marlene was like participating in a photo shoot or shooting a movie scene. Instead of focusing on their feelings, she paid too much attention to her appearance. Once, right in the middle of an intimate moment, she suddenly stopped just to adjust the pillow so her hair would fall beautifully. Or sometimes she had to check if the night lamp was shining right on her face to make her look sparkling. Wayne said bluntly, living with her was like doing homework, tiring and boring. She was so busy with making herself look perfect that she forgot she was next to a flesh and blood man. Wayne felt he was not a lover, but like a prop for her to perform her seductiveness. Every kiss, every touch of hers felt very fake, as if she had rehearsed it hundreds of times in front of the mirror before applying it. It lacked the burning passion, the honesty that a man desires. John Wayne confided that he would rather be with a normal woman who might be a bit messy but knew how to love truly, than be with a goddess who was always acting. He found Dietrich too cold and calculating. She controlled everything, from movements to breath, making the private room space suffocating. Wayne felt abandoned even while holding her in his arms, because her mind was busy worrying about her own appearance. He added that after every night with Marlene, he didn't feel comfortable or happy at all, but only felt exhausted. This exhaustion was not because she was too passionate, but because he had to act with her according to the script she had set. She wanted everything to be standard, perfectly stylized like a high-class movie. Wayne was a man who liked simplicity and wildness, so that mannerism made him sick of it. Talking about tricks, Wayne did not hesitate to share that she was bad in a very unique way. Not because she didn't pamper him, but because she did it in a very mechanical way. She was like a pre-programmed machine to seduce men, but lacked the fire of truth. He compared it in a very everyday way. Being next to Marlene is like eating a beautifully presented dish that has absolutely no spices inside, incredibly bland. At the end of the storytelling session, John Wayne took a sip of liquor and concluded with a very simple but profound sentence. He said that outward beauty is indeed very important, but when the bedroom door closes, what people need is a real soul, a sincere connection between two people. Marlene Dietrich had all the glamour of the world, but she lacked the warmth of a woman who knows how to love. For the Duke, the love affair with this German queen was an expensive lesson about never completely trusting what sparkles under the stage lights. "Let everyone worship her long legs and her eyes," Wayne muttered, "but to me, she is just a cold memory that I never want to return to a second time." Chapter 2. Esperanza Baur, when the private home turns into a life-and-death battlefield. After finishing the story about Queen Marlene, John Wayne coughed softly and signaled his friend to pour a little more liquor. He leaned back in his chair, his face slightly changing color when mentioning the next name, Esperanza Baur, or, as he often called her by the intimate but haunting name, Chata. This was his second wife, a hot Mexican actress. Wayne confessed that if Marlene Dietrich was a bland block of ice, then Chata was a jar of explosives that he had foolishly ignited. Wayne spoke in a voice that was both regretful and shuddering. He met Chata when he was at the peak of his career, and her wild, passionate beauty had knocked down a man who always liked strength like him. He thought marrying a Mexican wife would bring warmth and passion to his home. But alas, he didn't expect that passion would turn his life into a literal hell, especially when the bedroom door closed. In the eyes of the audience, Chata was a radiant beauty, but to Wayne, she was a literal disaster when living together. Not because she didn't know how to love, but because she was too crazy. Wayne said that private life with Chata never had any peace. She was an extremely jealous person with unstable psychology. Instead of being a resting place after tiring days of filming, the private room became a place where she started interrogations, arguments, and even violence. Wayne recalled the terrifying nights when he had just stepped into the room, not even having time to shed his exhaustion, and was already attacked by Chata with everything from curses to even household objects. Once, right when they were in their most private space, she suddenly flew into a rage just because she suspected him of looking at another actress on set. Wayne said bluntly, "Being with her, I always had to be on guard like being on the front lines. How could you feel passionate when you constantly had to worry and see if she was hiding a knife or a vase behind her back?" The bad thing about Chata when in love, according to Wayne, was her toxicity. She turned love into a tool to control and mentally abuse him. Instead of sharing, he only felt a sick possessiveness. There were times she intentionally acted passionate just to torture him later with raging fits of jealousy. Wayne felt his strength drained, not because of fun, but because of extreme stress. For a simple man like him, romance should bring happiness, not the feeling of standing in front of a gun barrel. John Wayne added a detail that the press later also made a fuss about, which was that Chata once tried to shoot him when he came home late from work. That violence haunted even their most private moments. He said that Chata did not know how to make a man feel respected or loved. She considered living together a power struggle where she had to be the winner and force him to submit. Her fierceness and aggressiveness killed all of the Duke's affection. He sighed, took a sip of liquor, and said, "People always say hot-tempered women are usually passionate in love. Completely wrong. Chata was indeed hot, but it was the heat of hell." He felt regretful for letting her sexy appearance deceive him. Behind that seductive look was a soul full of hatred and selfishness. The private life between the two was just plays of deceit and fear. Wayne admitted that there were nights he would rather sleep out in the barn with the animals and feel safer than going into the room with his wife. That marriage lasted 7 years, and those were the 7 years Wayne felt he aged the fastest. He concluded that no matter how beautiful or hot a woman is, if her heart only wants to confront her husband, she is just a throwaway wife. The worst thing about Chata was the fact that she turned the most beautiful thing between two people into a pile of rubble full of broken pieces. "Being with Chata, I learned one thing," Wayne muttered with a distant look, "that is, never live in the same house with someone who considers you an enemy. She might be as beautiful as a rose, but her thorns are poisonous, and they pierced me more painfully than any wound on a movie set." Chapter 3. Gail Russell, the melancholy angel, and the suffocating drunkenness. Sitting in his armchair, John Wayne stared intently at the smoldering fire in the fireplace. He sighed, a sigh carrying so much regret. After mentioning strong or haughty women, his voice suddenly dropped when mentioning the name Gail Russell. To him, Gail was not an enemy or a queen, but a pitiful little bird with broken wings. But in romance, and especially when being together in a private space, that pitifulness turned into a burden so large that it made the Duke feel exhausted. You know, Gail Russell was one of the beauties with the most delicate face and saddest eyes in Hollywood at that time. When co-starring with Wayne in the movie Angel and the Badman in 1947, she was only in her early 20s, fragilely beautiful like a flower branch. Wayne confessed that at that time he really wanted to protect this girl. She was so shy that she trembled in front of the camera, and every time like that, Wayne was the one who stood up to protect and coax her. The affection arising from that pity led them to a secret, bitter relationship. But when the private door closed, John Wayne realized that a woman's weakness is sometimes not as romantic as people think. Gail Russell suffered from agoraphobia and was afraid of her own self. To be able to face life and even to be intimate with Wayne, she turned to alcohol. Wayne said in a sad voice that he almost never saw Gail completely sober when she was with him. Wayne was a man who liked strength and cheerfulness. He wanted a woman who could laugh and talk with him and enjoy couples' happiness in a sober and passionate way. However, being with Gail Russell, he found himself more like a nurse than a lover. In the most private moments, instead of feeling warmth and connection, he only smelled the strong stench of gin emanating from her breath. Gail turned to alcohol to lessen her fear, but the alcohol itself turned her into a soulless corpse in his hands. Wayne frankly said that living in the same house with Gail was a very bad experience, but this badness made people feel pity rather than anger. She was there, motionless and resigned. There were times he saw her crying silently or staring blankly into space due to drunkenness. Wayne felt like he was babysitting a child rather than loving a woman. The melancholy and sadness surrounded the room, extinguishing all his romantic feelings. He said, "How can you feel happy when the woman beside you is trembling with fear and only wants to drink another glass to forget reality?" Gail's obsession with alcohol and her low self-esteem turned her into an extremely passive partner. She had no reaction, no interaction, and it seemed she only wanted quiet to sink back into the deep sleep of intoxication. Wayne felt his energy drained. After every time being with Gail, he didn't feel refreshed, but only felt a heavy heart. He felt guilty, felt he was contributing to her destruction, even though he had tried to help her quit drinking many times. Gail's worst thing when in love, according to Wayne, was the absence of her soul. She was there physically, but her heart and mind were lost somewhere very far away, where there was only pain and darkness. Wayne was a cowboy who liked truth, liked clear presence, so Gail's invisibility drove him crazy. He craved real passion, not the endurance of a woman using alcohol to forget life. Wayne added that there were nights he could only sit up, light a cigarette, and look at Gail sleeping soundly in a long, drunken stupor. He felt extremely lonely. The beauty of Gail's face at that moment meant nothing when between the two was an abyss of silence and sadness. He realized that love cannot exist if one side only knows how to take pity and drown in self-destruction. Later, when Gail Russell died at the age of 36 from alcohol poisoning, John Wayne was heartbroken. But when sitting and reminiscing on this armchair, he still had to be honest with himself. The relationship with Gail was a dark chapter in his private life's journey. He said a very simple sentence, but it contained all the exhaustion of those years. Gail was an angel, but being with an angel who always wanted to fall into the abyss was very tiring. In private, I didn't find the woman I loved. I only found a bottomless sadness. Wayne concluded that passion in love must come from two sides with whole souls. A woman who is too weak and dependent on stimulants will never be able to bring real happiness to a man, no matter how beautiful she is. To the Duke, Gail Russell was forever a withered flower branch that he tried to water but could never make bloom again. Never expect passion from someone who has given up on themselves, Wayne muttered, ending the story about the third woman, a sadness named Gail Russell. Joan Crawford, the Dry Queen, and the Romance Contract. John Wayne took a sip of bourbon, letting the spicy taste warm his sore throat. He gave a slight, wry smile when the next name appeared in his mind, Joan Crawford. Speaking of fame and power in Hollywood at that time, no one could surpass this queen. But to Wayne, private memories with Joan did not bring any sweet feelings. On the contrary, it made him feel like an employee doing a tax report rather than a man in love. You know, Joan Crawford was a symbol of professionalism and extraordinary willpower. She rose from poverty to become an A-list star, and she brought that steel personality into every corner of her life, including when in love. Wayne said that at first he was also quite curious about Joan. She was strong, decisive, and looked extremely sharp. A cowboy like Wayne inherently respected people with bravery. So he thought that being with such a woman would definitely be very interesting and challenging. But alas, there were challenges, but it was not interesting. Wayne said in a voice that was both funny and fed up that Joan Crawford had an obsessive-compulsive disorder about cleanliness and order to an excessive degree. Just imagine, when the two were in a private space, instead of exchanging affectionate gestures, Joan cared about dusting the headboard or checking if the bath towels were folded in the right creases. Wayne said bluntly, "Being with her, I felt like a germ invading her spotless laboratory." All excitement flew away completely when seeing her fussing with a cleaning cloth. But Joan's worst thing in private, according to Wayne, was her dominance and calculation. She never let things happen naturally. Joan considered intimacy like a business project where she was the general manager. She directed Wayne to do this, stand there, just as if she was directing a movie she funded herself to produce. Wayne was a man who liked to be in charge, liked free-spiritedness, so being micromanaged in his private life made him feel insulted and extremely tired. Wayne recounted a very everyday detail. "There were times I wanted to be a bit passionate, wanted to break the rules a bit, but Joan would stop it right away. She wanted everything to follow the exact procedure, exact time, and exact principles that she had preset in her head. Living in the same house with Joan was like you were executing a contract with hundreds of minor clauses. 1 millimeter wrong, and she reminded you immediately. That dryness and pragmatism killed all of the Duke's passion. Moreover, Joan Crawford was very cold. She did not have the softness and gentleness of a woman in love. In her eyes, affection seemed to be a tool to assert power or to achieve a purely personal satisfaction. Wayne felt he was drained in a mechanical way. He didn't find a soul connection, didn't find the passion he always expected. Every kiss of Joan carried the feeling of a social greeting in a business meeting, accurate but with no warmth. John Wayne confided that he was most afraid of Joan's sharp gaze whenever he did something that displeased her. She was too serious, too meticulous, to a terrifying degree. A private home is where one gets to be themselves. Being a bit clumsy is fine. But to Joan, it must be a flawless, perfect place. You were not allowed to sweat too much, not allowed to wrinkle your clothes excessively. It was truly torture." Wayne lamented with a face that still clearly showed terror. He concluded that Joan Crawford was the type of woman who loved work more than men. Even when in her lover's arms, she never stopped thinking about what to do tomorrow to maintain her position at the studio. Her rock-hard pragmatism turned romantic moments into bland transactions. Wayne felt sorry for the men who had passed through Joan's life because he understood that they never truly possessed this woman's heart or warmth. Draining his glass of liquor, Wayne finalized with a sentence that made everyone nod. Joan Crawford might be a great actress, a talented businesswoman, but when in love, she was a strict housekeeper. If you want to find someone to love, never choose a woman who always brings a notebook and pen right into a date. To Wayne, the life chapter about Joan Crawford was a lesson about how excessive control will kill love. He would rather choose a slightly messy woman who knew how to live fully with her emotions than a queen who always wanted to turn everything into a perfect report. Susan Hayward, the brutal clash of two massive egos. The sunset gradually faded. John Wayne's room now only had the flickering light from the half-burnt firewood. He leaned his head against the back of the chair, his old face clearly showing exhaustion, but also full of serenity because he had spoken out almost all his feelings. He took his last sip of liquor, let out a long breath, and mentioned the last name on the list, Susan Hayward. To Wayne, if Chata was a jar of explosives, then Susan Hayward was a firestorm in which neither was willing to yield to the other, leading to a badness in a way that both were exhausted. You probably still remember Susan Hayward, the brilliantly red-haired woman with an extremely fierce acting style. When co-starring with Wayne in the movie The Conqueror in 1956, both were at their peak performance. Susan was not the weak or shy type of woman. She was strong, stubborn, and had a massive ego no less than Wayne. At first, that very strength attracted Wayne. A Western man always liked tough challenges, and Susan was a high mountain he wanted to conquer. But when entering private moments, that strength became a deadly barrier. Wayne recounted with a bitter laugh that being with Susan Hayward was not like bonding, but like participating in a freestyle wrestling match on a wrestling mat. Susan never wanted to play the role of a protected woman. In life, she wanted to be the one steering, wanted to command, and wanted to overpower even Wayne. For a man with high self-esteem who liked to be in charge like the Duke, this was no different from a bucket of cold water splashed straight onto his excitement. Wayne frankly said, "Living with Susan was terribly tiring. She never relaxed, never yielded. Every time I wanted to be a bit proactive, she would find a way to turn the situation around to prove she was the one making the decisions. Instead of a smooth harmony, we were like two bulls ramming each other in a narrow space." The badness here was not because of a lack of sophistication, but because the two were too similar. Neither was willing to take a step back to create a rhythm. The disharmony between the two was so obvious that Wayne felt suffocated. He confided that no matter how strong a man is, when living together in the same house, he also needs a bit of softness and gentleness from a woman to balance things out. But with Susan Hayward, there was no such thing. She brought that fierceness and aggressiveness on set right into life. Wayne felt he was not a partner, but an opponent struggling to maintain his manly position. All passionate emotions were turned into tension and frustration. Wayne recalled a daily detail. "There were times after a tiring day of filming under the hot desert sun, I just wanted a peaceful comforting. But Susan was different. She was always full of energy in a scary way and wanted everything to happen at maximum intensity. Her passion did not bring happiness, but only made me feel more exhausted. I felt like I was going to fight a battle for the second time that day." Moreover, Susan's stubbornness made it so there was never any real emotional communication between the two. She considered winning in love as a way to assert herself. Wayne felt he was drained, not only physically, but also mentally. After every time being with Susan, he felt his heart was empty. He realized that when two egos that are too big clash in a private space, the only result is exhaustion and boredom. There was no gentleness, no listening, only a flaunting of strength and personal ego. John Wayne smacked his lips, his voice fading. "I have gone through so many battles, faced so many dangers, but I have never felt as tired as the times I was with Susan. She was too brilliant, too strong, but lacked the most important thing of a woman, which is yielding, so love has a place to sprout." To the Duke, the love affair with Susan Hayward was like a dish that was too spicy. At first, it was stimulating, but the more you ate, the more burning and painful it felt. He concluded that harmony in romance most needs compensation. If one person is hot, the other must be cool. If one is strong, the other must be soft. When both people want to be the king, the house will turn into a battlefield. Susan Hayward was forever a beautiful icon, but in Wayne's private memories, she was a memory of disharmony and useless struggles. Draining the last drop of liquor, John Wayne leaned his body entirely against the chair, closing his eyes. He had finished saying everything that needed to be said. 6 names, 6 stories, and 6 different disillusionments. He realized that the most wonderful thing is not being with a goddess or a brilliant star, but being with a woman who understands him, who knows how to appreciate the simplest moments. "Never look for passion in power struggles," Wayne whispered the final sentence, when the fire in the fireplace was only glowing red embers. "True love lies in peace, the thing that those Hollywood queens could never give me." The journey into John Wayne's end-of-life judgments has officially closed. We see a completely different The Duke from the movies, a man who also knew fatigue, knew loneliness, and knew disillusionment. The women who passed through his life were all monuments, but behind the halo were very real-life truths. John Wayne is gone, taking with him his secrets and his honesty. For us, the audience, these stories are not to tear anyone down, but to understand that even the greatest people always crave a simple sincerity in love, a thing that sometimes fame and money can never buy. Can you believe that behind the glamour of the stars are such bitter truths like this? John Wayne has said it all. What about you? Are you on the side of the Western Godfather, or do you still believe in the kisses on screen? Share your thoughts and subscribe now to join me in exploring unreleased secret files about the golden age of Hollywood.